So for me, what's happened here, so there's this wonderful little shop. They sell these candles, right?
Okay.
I saw this one. They have a dice in the bottom for gamers, which is amazing. But he
Ooh.
found this one called
Wizard's
Wizard's
Library.
Library.
Ooh. Wait, what does it
Mhm.
say?
A curation of rich mahogany shelves and leather-bound spellbooks.
Ooh, that must be a nice smell. Just smells probably like you're opening a book.
So if you're
Mm.
in Provo, stop by We Geek Together in the mall and get
I
yourself some of these
love
candles.
shops like that because there's so many fun like gifts that you can buy people. My love language is definitely like giving gifts. Like I love giving gifts to people. So I also think very hard about what I want to give people. For birthdays and stuff, I like to, think outside the box. And so then shops like that are so cute to have because they just have like all these nitty gritty stuff that is not like essential to life, but it's so cute to have.
Yeah, and their shop is not just cute little novelties. They play role-playing games there, and they have all kinds of materials and things that
Ooh.
spark the imagination, especially as a fantasy writer. I love those sorts of
Ooh.
places to go get ideas and just bounce things off people. So
Ooh. Well, as of this recording, today we celebrated the 100th year of Afrikaans being a language.
congratulations.
We're a very young language, but we're still strong.
All those lies that is dying out, not true. I was reading something about it a couple months ago that people were like, oh, there's only 8 Afrikaans speakers in the world. I'm like, well, then I've met 4 of them.
It's only because, Charlize Theron said it. And so we were like, we feel like you haven't been in South Africa for a while now, apparently, because shoo.
Today I'm drinking some kiwi strawberry.
Ooh, yummy. That sounds
Mm.
delicious. So today I decided to spoil myself because on Sunday it's Mother's Day and I decided that I'll do something nice for my kids' parents. And so I bought all of the mums like this little packet. It's Hug in a Mug. This one is a Romany Creams cappuccino. So Romany Creams is a cookie we have in South Africa. And so that is what I'm drinking today.
Are we ready to go?
We are ready to go. Hey ho. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tea and Tales. I'm Madeleine I now.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We want to thank everyone for joining us today and for tuning in each week. We especially want to thank Shanae Kashelny and Tamsin Bester. Today's episode, we're talking about, is your book ready to go out to either self-publishing or to your agents that are on your list? How do we know if it's ready? And I feel like this is one of those topics where people either get super bogged down and wait way too long to do anything, or they're too eager to get out there. I know I was on the eager side
Same,
myself.
same, same. Luckily, I have Claire Draycott on my side because when I was very eager, she was like, whoa, 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 chill your guava. Like, hold on a minute because you should have it ready when it is ready and not when you think it is ready or want it to be ready, which is so hard. I think I've talked about so many instances where either I was too eager to want to release my book or I just got into a stump to be like, oh my gosh, I can't do another edit because I will die. And then it's one of those like, oh my gosh, I can't do another edit, but I still know it's not ready, but I want it to be ready. And then you're just like this whole cloud of, I don't know, that is just like hovering above you.
So sometimes you feel like you might be a little bit on one side or the other, like it's dramatic. It's either way over here or I'm way over here. I'm
Absolutely.
never in this nice central, like constant feeling of comfort and I've got this. It just doesn't seem to happen to many authors. So if you're the kind who does that, please let us know how, because I haven't met one yet.
Right?
But I've also met these authors who they'll be so gung ho and they're like, I am so ready. I'm going to finish these edits. We're going to get there. And then they actually finish getting ready. And then they hit the wall. They're like, I don't want to put anything out there. I don't want to do this anymore. I actually have to send a query. Are you kidding me?
Like, I feel the first hurdle is actually finishing a novel. I think I always read you know, can't trust Twitter that much, or any social media for that matter. But I always read this little thing that says like 3% of people actually finish writing their novels. So you're in the 3% or something like that. So then I always kind of feel good about myself because I'm like, I finished writing my novel. But then the real work starts. But I always find it so funny also because I think in this industry, and I will connect it to like the entertainment industry as well, whether you're a singer, well, I find that with my writing as well and with my songwriting. It's like I would write something, I would record something, and then I would listen to it and I'm like, no, needs to change. Then I would change it, and then it's like, no, still not good. And so eventually you just have to come to a point where you're like, you know what, this is as good as it's gonna get, and we are just gonna have to be like, okay, let's send it out, or okay, let's let people listen to it, because otherwise you're just gonna keep on editing forever because you are your worst critic, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time. But yeah, it's an everyday struggle.
Absolutely. So when we are preparing to get our novel out, I'm really glad you put this on our list of things to talk about, because people are constantly concerned on all the forums that I've read, all of the posts that I see on our different groups that I'm in. Am I ready? Am I really ready to put this out there? And the first step is to think about, have you done the edits? Have you gone back through that novel and checked that it is a consistent and good story, written well? And we went into depth into editing in a previous episode in season 2. So go back and look at that for some of the specifics, but have you gone through those line edits and the developmental edits? That's the question you need to ask yourself before you really think, yes, it's ready to go.
And when you do your edits, it's not just like one edit and hey ho, Bob's your uncle, let's go type of vibes. And that's why people always say, you know what, if you write a novel, you really have to love what you write, because the chances of you going through it 20, 30, 40, 50 times is very good. You aren't necessarily going to go through your entire manuscript like so many times, but there are certain scenes that you're just going to have to like rework so many times. And so, yeah, definitely write what you love, because you're going to have to read through it a lot of times. And your edits come in different phases as well, because if you have your first draft, then you have something to work off of. And as soon as you have that, then basically your first edit starts, because then you start, I always say your first draft is your skeleton. And then your second draft is basically like the meat that you put onto your skeleton. And so then your third draft, which would count as editing, I would say, is where you start making sure that there's a flow to the story. And so each edit contributes to your development of your novel. So each time you go through a novel is a different aspect of editing that you have to tick off your little list, which then leads us to beta readers.
Yes, definitely. What would we know how to change sometimes without a beta reader who is objectively looking at this novel, telling us our blind spots and helping us to see that I thought I put that in there and it's not even there. That happened to me last week, where both of my beta readers were like, I don't understand this. I said, well, because of this. This happened like 2 paragraphs ago. And they said, no, it did not. Oh,
No.
that never made it out of my head onto the page. What would I do without them helping me see that it was here, not where they could see it? And beta readers are so amazing at helping to point out things like chronological inconsistencies. Or if we changed a name halfway through and we forgot in such and such chapter to make sure to change the name, they're like, who's this random person?
I always find that so funny. And then a character name would pop in and I'm like, wait, who is this? And I'm like, you literally just called the person Stephanie. I'm like, who's Michelle now? And they're like, no, never mind. Was the same person.
Search and find change.
I think that is one of my favorite, tools to do. Find.
We have talked about beta readers so much. I think we had an entire episode on beta readers as well. So go back and listen to that episode where we talk about how to find beta readers, what beta readers can do for you, how to set up your beta readers for success, all those things. And then our other episode on interpreting feedback. Go back to that one. How do you take the feedback that you got from those beta readers so that you can implement it into this draft? And once you've done those steps, then what?
Yeah. I don't know, Sarah. Then what?
Then the next step even after you've been through beta readers, even after you have edited, you need to check with yourself in your mind if there are any spots that are still bothering you. Because here's the thing that I've learned. Sometimes there'll be a spot that is weak and needs help that the beta readers either skip or miss because they're thinking about other things that you need to fix. Once those things are fixed, though, that spot starts to come to the surface. It starts to rise like a terrible volcano hotspot, and it's going to blow up your manuscript in that next phase if you don't address it. So make sure you are comfortable with every scene, every plot point, every character arc, that you don't have anything about them that's bothering you. Because if it's bothering you, it probably needs to be focused on. And it could be a small tweak, but small tweaks make a big difference.
Very true. I actually had an instance where I was giving my novel to beta readers and everybody came back with feedback. And as I was like reading the feedback, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, my first chapter really annoys me. I'm just like, I don't know why, but I'm just not vibing with it. I'm like, I feel it's so boring. And so I didn't understand why it was boring to me. And I couldn't understand why it annoyed me or bothered me so much. And so then I went back to my beta readers and I was like, can you specifically like look at this chapter and just tell me what are you vibing with? Because especially when you query it, a majority of agents will ask for your first 5 pages, for your first 50 pages. And so those are very crucial pages for you to have and to have them as good as they can be, because you want the agent to read your entire novel. You want your agent to want to read more. And so I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just not vibing with it. And so then people came back to me and they're like, no, it read fine. Maybe you think it's just slow. And I was like, yeah, I kind of feel like it is slow. And then they told me it's not slow in a bad way. It's slow in a get to know the character and to understand the character for what's about to happen next way. And I was like, guy, I mean, I can work with that. And I think that is probably what bothered me, because I'm so used to my first chapters being the meet cute, I almost want to say, because then I'm like right in the action, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And then I start my story and I move onwards. Whereas this one started with just one of my main characters, and she was like leaving for work and she was like going home and doing like her own stuff, like nothing romantic, no meet cutes, no coffee spilling or anything like that. And so I think that is why it bothered me, because I'm not used to it. Not just one person said it, like multiple people said it. Then I was just like, okay, this is me being my own worst enemy or own worst critic and just overthinking it. And I'm like, no, it's never going to be enough.
I love that you took the concern to your readers, because when you get into your own head, it's easy to talk yourself into or out of a lot of things. And so you ask your readers, please help me. And I want to pull out this article called 10 Ways to Tell If Your Book is Ready for Publishing. It's by Sarah Juckus. I hope I said that right, from Completely Novel. And one of the things that she says in these 10 points is to connect with your readers and know what they want. And so if they had come back, you connected with your readers and they said, yeah, it's kind of boring, I don't want to see her everyday life, then you would have your answer. Okay, this needs to change. But they came back and said, I kind of like seeing her everyday life. You've written it in a way that's interesting. It makes me feel connected. I want to read the next chapter and I want to move forward and see all the next stuff. That's getting to know your reader. This is one of the great things about beta readers. They are your readers.
Yeah, I think we'll never have enough things to say about beta readers.
Absolutely. But then she very much follows that up, not just to speak to your target audience and your target reader, know what they want, but she also says, know that you can't please everyone. In this example, you specifically said a majority of them liked it. You can't please everybody, but the majority of the readers were happy with it. So I'm going to say it's all right as well.
So then the next thing, and I think I mentioned it in a previous episode where I talked about Cece Lyra, and she had this lovely Instagram post where she talked about, when would you think your novel would be ready to send out, to publish, to whatever? And I will just repeat myself, even if you've listened to it before, you can never listen to it enough times. If an agent comes to you or a publication company comes to you a publisher comes to you and they're like, you know what, we love your novel, we would love to publish it, but you aren't going to get it edited right now, it's just going to go as the way it is. If your first thought is, yes, my novel is ready, I would absolutely love for it to be published just the way it is because I feel confident, strong enough in the work that I've put in and the edits that I've done and all those things, then you are ready. If you think, you know what, I think that scene that I was thinking about previously, no, that needs a little bit of twerking, or you're like, you know what, no, the character arc of this character wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be, or as complete as I wanted it to be, then that might be your sign that you are not ready for your novel to go out.
I love that because it goes back to the idea of, is there something bothering you that you really need to fix? Or is there a step you know you've skipped that you need to go back to? But I think the danger with that as well, and I don't want people to get caught in that trap of holding on to it and super editing. Because if a specific sentence just bothers you and you've rewritten it 100 times, perhaps you're overthinking that sentence. Perhaps. You don't want to over edit your novel. And there's always going to be feedback when you get to that publisher of things that they think can be fixed and tweaked and worked around. Some people have less of that. Some people have more of that. We've had guests on who have talked about that. But you need to give yourself a little bit of grace that once it is as good as you can get it, you don't need to be fussing with tiny itty bitty details. You have the writing, trust in your writing as well.
100%. And I actually fell into that little trap when I was doing my query letter, because I wrote it, I sent it out to people to read, and then they come back with feedback. Then I fix it, then I send it out, and they come back with feedback. Then after the 15th time that I fixed it, I didn't even know what my story was about anymore because I over edited it. And so then I literally, what I did is I was like, you know what? Scratch everything. I'm just going to start from the beginning. And yeah, I think it's such a delicate balance to realize when enough is enough.
So let's say you've gone through beta readers, at least 3 of them. I like to do 3 rounds of 3 myself. And you've gone through your developmental edits. You've gone through your line edits. You've made sure that all the character names are the same. And then you can answer the question that Nell just gave us from CC Lyra, that yes, I do feel like if it was printed as is, it would be a great book and I would be happy with it. Now, when you send it to people, how do you send it to people? How do you get it to them? What's the format? I see this question all the time too. Just last week, we had somebody questioning this in one of the groups who said, so what am I supposed to format this as? What am I supposed to do? So let me give you a really quick breakdown of the basic format. Now, you need to remember that when you are querying, some agents don't even ask for pages. So don't worry about it yet. But the ones who do don't usually want it attached. They want it in their email or in the query tracker. And emails and query trackers don't like formatting. They look funny, and especially if the agent's reading it on their phone and their device and it's got weird formatting, they're going to be like, wow, my eyes can't focus on this. I'm moving on. So the first thing you need to do is take your pages, put them into a document separate from your main document, like make a copy document, probably the first 50 pages, and get rid of all the formatting. Left justify. Make sure that it's in a normal font like Times New Roman or Arial so that it's easy for all emails to read and translate into whatever that email is going to change it into. And make sure that you have the spacing between your paragraphs. Put an extra space between those paragraphs. The only formatting I don't take out is I make sure it's still 12-point font and I make sure it's still double spaced. That's it. The rest of it, you want to get rid of as much formatting as possible so that these programs can read what you're trying to send to the agent.
If an agent comes back to you and they're like, oh my goodness, I loved your first 5 pages, or I loved your query letter, and I want your full manuscript, so you get a full request, then your formatting might look a bit different, because generally, especially if you use like Query Tracker, then you would have to send an attachment, which would usually be in a Word doc. So then the formatting changes a little, but it's still the correct way to do it. You want to have it in 12-point. You want to have it double spaced and you want to have it indented. And I think that is the thing that is different from when you send it with an email or through your first. Some agencies say do it through our website or something like that. And so with indentement, this is the fun little one. So when you start a chapter, your first paragraph should not be indented. So it should start at the left side corner of your page. So from then on, the rest of the chapter should have an indentation for every paragraph that you write. And so for every chapter that you write, your first paragraph of your chapter should not have an indentation, and then the rest of your paragraphs in that chapter should have it. Also, italics. If you have certain things that needs italics, if it's inner voice, if it's words that's not English or anything like that, or a novel or a song that you are talking about, then that should be in italics, because that makes it a lot easier for the agent to read. It might not confuse them, because sometimes they'll be like, what is happening right now? So if it's in italics, then that will just help the person who is reading it read it smoother, because that is what you want.
The only other thing is make sure it is still double spaced with 1-inch margins on your page. Whenever you are sending an attached document, those are the general rules. And why do they ask for those rules? Because it's easy for them to read. They don't want to get something with a weird font that's hard on the eyes. They want to read and make sure that it's a story they want. They don't want any stumbling blocks. And so making sure it's in those parameters gives them an easy read off of that Word document that you're sending to them. Don't worry about publishing formatting. And that's where I see people making a mistake here. They want to use their fancy program that says, hey, do this, and it's the publishing formatting. And then it gives you weird margins on the sides, and it might give you some weird look of what the pages look like side by side. That can be very distracting for an agent. They're not looking for a publishing format. That's for the publisher to deal with. They just want to be able to read something easy and clear and concise that they can make notes on. Make it easy on your agent. They will thank you. Don't get fancy. Don't throw in a lot of colors. Don't throw in a bunch of different types of fonts, things like that. In Sarah's article, she gave us a couple more pointers about being prepared to pitch, being prepared to have your book out there. And I found it a very interesting perspective, because I was thinking all about the manuscript, making sure the manuscript is perfect. But she branched a little bit into your mindset about your manuscript.
Ooh.
Right? And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And so she gave a couple of things like pitch your book to a total stranger.
Ooh.
And I thought, well, how would that help me with my manuscript? But then she says, if you think your family and friends are being nice when they tell you your book is awesome, try pitching it to someone you don't know. What questions do they ask? Use the feedback to nail your elevator pitch, and it also will help you to tighten your manuscript, because they might find a little weirdness when you're trying to explain something to them. And then she also says, think about where your book fits in the current book market. And I didn't think about that, but she's very right. Because if you're writing your book for a target audience, when you're editing it, when you're getting it ready for the agent, when you're preparing what you're going to say to agents, you need to have that in your head of where your book falls in the market. And we've talked about that before, but I never thought about it in the perspective of preparing my manuscript.
I haven't thought of it either. And that is actually a very enlightening way to see it, because I think that's also going to make you decide whether your manuscript is ready or not. If you don't know what your current book market is your novel really ready? Because those are important things to know, because that's what you have to pitch to an agent, because they want to know that you know what you are doing, on what genre your novel is, or where it's going to be placed in a shelf and something like that.
Exactly. We like to keep it short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you love what we're doing here, and you love the information that we are sharing, please go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Tea Tales. And help us to get up to the top, and go to that little purple icon on your device and like and share and comment and just spread the love of this community that we are creating.
Happy writing.
Bye!